chosen prayer today from the prayers and meditations of the mother is a prayer written by the mother as she is traveling towards Pondicherry, March 23rd, 1914. Just a few more days and she will reach Pondicherry. And through these prayers, the mother has always shown us the way to all the different forms of yoga, whether it is karma yoga, whether it is bhakti yoga, whether it is any form of sadhana. All answers one would find over here. The prayer, March 23rd, 1914, titled by my limited mind, What to Do and How to Do. It is all about choices, and choices are not always easy to make. The mother has dealt with this problem of making the right choices and the right actions thereafter in several of her prayers. But in this prayer, she is telling us what is the process that one undergoes, what are the difficulties one undergoes while making the choices, and how to make the right action thereafter. She's taking us step by step in details as to what really goes into making choices, what are the difficulties, and when faced with the dilemma of making this choice or that choice, what one needs to do in case of dilemmas, in case of contemplations which lead you to think that whatever be the choice, nothing seems to be right. So the mother is showing the way. So what to do and how to do, these are questions which have tormented the conscientious people throughout. And one would look into the scriptures, the holy books, or ask elders for advice, or look at the commandments. And when one is not satisfied, rather, if one is confused, in spite of going through all this, and there is no way out, nothing seems right, then one usually gives into something which one follows the dictates of the reason. And that too, when one follows, one often finds that there is a dilemma, and at best, the choices, when made through reflections and through reason, are at best mixed. And many times, the reverse of what should be done and what should not be done actually happens. So what could be the cause for this? It is human nature itself. There is a sensitivity which develops as humanity evolves. And this sensitivity develops in what we today call as sympathy, or you can say the rudiments of compassion start developing in the heart. And as Sri Aurobindo puts it, the seat of sympathy, compassion, they are all lying in the soul. The seat is there in the soul. And once one starts feeling this kind of sensitivity, it is also indicative of the soul's development and progress. So as we develop and grow in consciousness, or rather become conscientious, we want that whatever be our action, if it is good for us, it should not be at the cost of causing any harm or suffering to others. It should not cause any pain. It may be good for me, but that feeling comes, that sensitivity comes, that what I am doing, is it going to harm others? If it is so, it should not be so. So, and this is where the problem of making the right choices and the right action actually arises. This problem is not there at the two extremes, the two extreme poles, one can say. For a selfish person, a person who is self-centered, it is very easy because his choices are largely governed by his own personal interests, and to hell with the world, my choice matters, my interest matters, and it's very easy for him to make that choice. And for an enlightened soul, or for godmen or for gods. This problem of making choices is also not there because they are acting from the very high state of intuition. And the intuitive state allows them to see with clarity what is to be done. So these problems are not faced by these two poles. Problem is with the conscientious, so-called, well-intentioned Arjunas who are caught between these two poles, rather torn between these two poles, who know that what their dharma is, but are yet confused and can't decide. And they are often tormented by the, one can say, the morass of mental dogmas. What could be the repercussion? Repercussion is something I can't take. Or clinging to old habits and preconceived ideas of what is right and what is wrong. And the mother has pointed out very clearly that the universe is created at each moment. And new elements are being added to it, and the dead ones are getting discarded. So the truth of yesterday often degenerates into the falsehood of today. So there is no straight law which one can say pinpointedly that if I make this choice and do this action without any feeling of, you can say, tripping over, or without being absolutely fair and absolutely just, so that all good happens to all people, whatever decision I take, whatever action I take, all good happens to all people. This is not the case. There is no straight law as such. And life seems to be, for these well-intentioned Arjunas, and most of us, I think we fall in that category. So it is a perpetual catch-22 situation. So there will be undesired consequences no matter what action is taken. Catch-22 is a phrase, is a term which became very popular. It's taken from the novel. The novel is named Catch-22 by Joseph Heller. And here, it's very interesting. When I was reading this prayer, what struck me was that, yes, the mother is so beautifully bringing out what we today call as catch-22 situations. And most of us, we are in that situation many times, many of the times. So it's a paradoxical situation where whatever decision you take, there will be some repercussion, there will be some limitation, and a person feels trapped. And there is no escape from this kind of a situation. For example, to get a job, you need an experience, but to get the experience, you need the job. So it's like that. And in the story, Catch-22, I would like to narrate it just like a story. There's a pilot, and it's a story about World War II, and most of the experiences are from the author's own experiences during World War II when he was involved. So this pilot, he sees that so much of harm is being done by these bombings, and he's a pilot and he doesn't want to do any flying missions now because he's seen the hard side, he's seen the rough patch in the war. Kisi ka bhi bhala nahi ho raha hai. So he really wants to get out of this, and he tries all tricks and all ways and means of convincing the authorities that he is not fit for flying. So it seems in the story that if a pilot is deemed insane, he will not be required to fly anymore. He can escape that. And if he is to be deemed insane, he has to make a request for evaluation. And if he makes a request for evaluation, it demonstrates that he is not insane. So there is no way any pilot can actually escape from flying, and there is no way out. So life is like this for most of us. Life is a classroom. An educationist would say it's a classroom, and each moment is a test. And our acts, however small or however insignificant they may be, they either lift us or they bring us down. Any act, the smallest of the acts. And Amir Khusro would say, बहुत कठिन है डगर पन घटकी, अब कैसे भर लाऊं मैं जमुना से मटकी, पनिया भरन को मैं जो गई थी, छीन झपट मोरी मटकी पटकी. So this was Krishna's way of testing. He would throw a kankad at the matki and the water would flow out. And the poor gopis had to run again and get a better matki. So it was his way of showing that your matki is kacha. You have to make it pakka for the life forces, otherwise the life forces will drain out of you like water and they will be wasted. All experiences will be wasted. So for those who want to follow the path of truth, no, this seems like a constant tussle. It's difficult. There is a constant tension. Kya kare? What to do? What are these choices? And even when we are able to make the choice, ki haan yahi karna hai, how to do it? So this is another question. So the doers of so-called good deeds or altruism बहुत जल्दी थक जाते हैं. They get tired too easily and too soon because of this constant tension of what to do and how to do. And inaction of any type is not acceptable to our Creator, whether it is physical, whether it is moral, whether it is spiritual. Inaction will not be tolerated by the Creator. And it's all about consciousness. Consciousness, if we look at it very closely, it's like a slippery pole. And to have a very static foothold over it is very difficult all the time. या तो हम ऊपर जाएंगे, अगर हम ऊपर नहीं जाते हैं तो एकदम धड़ाम से नीचे जाएंगे. And so much down we will go that it may take us lifetimes to come up again. So it is a slippery pole and one has to be very cautious. And one has to be constantly conscious of what we are doing and how we are doing. So the ones who are on the spiritual path are often made aware that this inertia of consciousness is something that they have to be very careful of. What are the choices we need to make? How we need to make the choices? And beautifully, the mother is bringing it out. She's hand-holding us. This is one of the longest prayers in prayers and meditations, but nevertheless, there is so much of meat and content, one would say, where the mother is starting from the highest state possible, जहाँ पे कोई reflection की ज़रूरत ही नहीं होती है, where she is. And then she brings us to what are the difficulties, step by step, and how to overcome those difficulties, how to look at those difficulties, and then make the choice, which may seem the right choice. March 23rd, 1914. As I see it, the ideal state is that in which, constantly conscious with thy consciousness, one knows at every moment, spontaneously, without any reflection being necessary, exactly what should be done to best express thy law. That state I know, for I have experienced it at certain moments. But very often, the knowledge of the how is veiled by a mist of ignorance, and one must call in reflection, which is not always a good counselor, let alone all that one does at every instant without having any time for reflection, on the spur of the moment. How far does it conform with or oppose thy law? That depends upon the state of the subconscient, on what is active in it at that time. Once the deed is done, if it has any importance, if one can look at it, analyze it, understand it, it serves as a lesson, enables one to become aware of one's motive of action, and hence of something in the subconscient which still governs the being and has to be mastered. Every action on earth is bound to have a good and a bad side. Even the actions which best express the most divine law of love carry in them something of the disorder and darkness inherent in the world as it is today. Some people, those who are called pessimists, perceive almost exclusively the dark side of everything. The optimists, on the other hand, see only the side of beauty and harmony. And if it is foolish and ignorant to be an unwitting optimist, is it not making a happy conquest to become a willing optimist? In the eyes of pessimists, whatever one does will always be bad, ignorant, or egoistic. How could one satisfy them? It is an impossible task. There is only one recourse: to unite as perfectly as possible with the highest and purest light that one can conceive, to identify one's consciousness as completely as possible with the absolute consciousness, to strive to receive all inspirations from that consciousness alone, so as to foster as best one can its manifestation upon earth, and trusting in its power to regard all events with serenity. Since everything is necessarily mixed in the present manifestation, the wisest thing is to do one's best, striving towards an ever higher light, and to resign oneself to the fact that absolute perfection is for the moment unrealizable. And yet, how ardently must we always aspire for that inaccessible perfection. As we can see, the way the mother has started the prayer, she starts from the highest and the best state. She says, as I can see it, the ideal state is that in which, constantly conscious with thy consciousness, one knows at every moment spontaneously, without any reflection being necessary, exactly what should be done to best express thy law. So, mother is at that state where she knows it is possible, even without reflection, without any doubt, without any contemplation, to know, to exactly know what is to be done and do the right action. So she is describing that state, and there is no question, no dilemma, and one is very sure that it is the divine will that is going to manifest through that action. So she says, that state I know, for I have experienced it at certain moments. So she has experienced it time and again. But very often, how humbly she is saying, very often the knowledge of the how is veiled by a mist of ignorance, and one must call in reflection, which is not always a good counselor. Let alone all that one does at every instant without having any time for reflection, on the spur of the moment. How far does it conform with or oppose thy law? So she's saying that state I'm aware of, I know what is to be done. But somehow the how part, how am I going to do it, is veiled by ignorance, veil of doubts. So Arjuna knows that Bhishma and Drona have to go, they will go. But how will he make himself do it? They are his gurus, they are his elders, he respects them, he loves them. How is he going to do it? A doctor knows that the patient in front of him has only few days to live. So what the doctor will do now? Will he just, say that, okay, I know he's just has a few days to live, so I'll not do anything. Or he'll tell the family members, please take him, no more, nothing can be done. Should he do that? Or should he say, I know he will do, he's going to die, but what can I do to make it more pleasant for him or more peaceful for him? Or is there something I can still do for this person so that his journey way forward after death becomes easier. So these are some of the things which reflection brings in, Sometimes they may tell us the right thing to do, sometimes not, but we'll not be ever sure of whether it is the best that we are doing. So, and there are several times when we don't have the luxury of time, when we have to take the decision instantly, and there is no time for any reflection or pondering over or any, you can say, rationalizing or reasoning. A lady is in labor, okay, and it's a difficult labor. So, if during the delivery there is a great chance of the baby not surviving, and if they try to survive the baby, make it live, then there is a great danger to the mother. So, what should the family members do, or what should the doctor do at that time? So, in such times, mother says that whatever we do, whether it is in accordance with the divine law or not, or is in conformity with the divine will, depends on what is the state of the subconscious that we are in at that moment. What is the state of subconscious that is active at that time? So if there is an extreme attachment, or if there is a very strong desirous self which is taking over you, then most likely it is going to be opposed to the divine will. Most people blunder through life, acting randomly, and many times we are not even aware of the motive why we are doing it. And because these are the times when the impulse to action actually is originating from the subconscious. And the subconscious is a residue of so much of accumulation from the past lives, so much of desire self, so much of impulses that have gone into it. There is a heady cocktail all the time going on in there. And most of the times when the subconscious is very active, overactive, when it is actually opposed to the divine law or to what is our true being or the soul wants. So imagine the fervor of thousands of crusaders in the name of religion. So much of massacre, so much of atrocities have happened in the name of maybe a fatwa or a papal dictate or the priest saying something, or just a small group of people dominating and brainwashing the others. So much of gruesome, one can say, massacre, killings, and innocents have lost their life. And such kind of aberrations usually take place when masses of people give the right of their own thinking and taking decisions to others. And then it may take centuries to, erase that pain or erase that, move the collective consciousness higher. And then we lament, and then there is remorse. And throughout life there is remorse. Like Kaikeyi, she had taken a bad decision, under the influence of Manthara. And she had a lot of remorse. Though she is a lady of great dignity, she's a queen, she's a warrior queen, and she has borne with many difficulties and she has succeeded and come, victorious from those difficulties. Yet, at one loose moment, the reason was, her reason got shadowed and everything got shadowed. Whatever was positive in her, whatever was the spirit in her, it got shadowed, and she ended up asking for something which led to so much of trauma. And the mother goes on to say, once the deed is done, if it has any importance, if one can look at it, analyze it, understand it, it serves as a lesson, enables one to become aware of one's motive of action, and hence of something in the subconscious which still governs the being and has to be mastered. So once a thing is done, one needs to learn a lesson from that, be ready to look at it now very dispassionately, one can say, at ourselves and our actions. And the mother says, it is not always good to go back and lament and cry and give in to cursing, anger, anguish, and also guilt. But look at the situation or look at it as something that has happened and look very intently and very microscopically at our own motive that was hiding within us that led to it, that prompted our actions. And one has to do it very sincerely. And when one does this sincerely over a period of time, it is almost impossible that every decision, every act of ours will be correct and we are making the right choice. So we would be living in a mirage if we do that. So every action will have a good and bad side. So if we look very intently as to what went wrong and why is there so much of misery in me and why am I feeling so sad, that itself will give you a clue that this is something that we need to master. If I am constantly lamenting about a choice I have made and an action that has occurred through me, and I go on harping about it, raving and ranting about it, it tells something about me, no? That there is something in me which is only concerned about and there is some sort of an ego which I now need to let go. Because of that, and even sadness originates, too much of sadness, depression. The cause is actually ego. So one gets a hint that look within, go within very carefully. And it so happens that the people who have embarked on this path of yoga, such kind of choices, such kind of, you can say, actions can actually become stepping stones for something greater. Because the more you go on making similar kind of choices, the Divine Mother is going to go on giving you such situations again and again, till the time you realize that the problem is within me. And once we realize that and we turn to the Mother and we acknowledge, yes, it was something in me that was preventing me, or something in me that was not right, which was leading me to get attached to the situations in negative or whatever way. And then we turn, of course, we turn to the Mother and we thank her. Then gratitude emerges. Ma, thank you for being there. Thank you for showing it to me. And when this happens, then the path becomes very easy. So Mother here, she makes a very strong statement. Every action on earth is bound to have a good and a bad side. So we can leave aside our formations and our conceptions कि हाँ यही होना है, यही सही है, मुझे तो लगता है यही सही है, यही होना है. And most of the time we are harping about that. See, I told you, तुमने नहीं किया ना, I told you. So we get into that. So here there is a statement coming that every action has a good and a bad side. Even the actions which best express the most divine law of love carry in them something of the disorder and darkness inherent in the world as it is today. Now, this is a very sobering thought. It is indeed a very sobering thought that even the action of the avatar originating from the highest level of consciousness, from the divine law of love, those are also not free from the darkness and the environmental disorders that are surrounding our earth today. Even the best of the actions are bound to have a negative side. To think that the best action is the best for all and everyone is something that we have to compromise on at this time. Sri Krishna, he is of course Arjuna's closest friend. And Arjuna has great faith in Lord Krishna, that he will take care of everything. Now, he does everything to save Arjuna. At one point of time, he also forgets that he is the divine and he jumps and he is ready to, thrash the enemy. And then, of course, he is bound by law. He can't participate in the war, but he forgets that also. So much is his love, and he wants to protect Parth so much. But this does not entail that all Arjuna's progeny, Abhimanyu, and all of Draupadi's sons and all were also given that protection. It was only for Arjuna that he could. So look at the war itself. I mean, any war for that matter. Of course, war of Kurukshetra, Krishna let it happen because otherwise the reign of Aryabhatta would not have been established. It was getting lost. So to establish that, of course, the war happened, so much of death. So the war had a very mega purpose, a very good cause. The war happened from a very high level of consciousness for everybody, not only for Pandavas and the Kauravas, for everybody. It was like that. But yet, so much of bloodshed and so much of misery happened. So the best action always does not guarantee that all will be happy. Everybody will be happy if the best action takes place. Do we really understand the world as it is? In fact, there were incidents when Sri Aurobindo was there in his physical form, the disciples would come many a time and complain, this chain snatching happened over there. And people would say, or somebody got thrashed from the ashramite, got thrashed by outside people, or there is a quarrel, and there is, somebody is hitting poor animals with a stick or something like that. They would often come to him and say, and Sri Aurobindo would explain that the world as it is now, the divine law, the divine life has not yet been established right now. And for that to be established, there is a lot of catharsis that the earth has to undergo. Each one of us has to undergo pain, suffering. Sometimes when the pain and the suffering is not because of our own fault, many times it is like that. Why does, sometimes our bodies, we come with some disorders? We don't know. And we are not responsible for it. But yet they happen. So, Sri Aurobindo very beautifully he explains that the pain and suffering, where we know that we have not contributed to this situation, they are all to exhaust some of maybe something that was being, you can say, some things which were deeply hidden. It could be a carryover from the past lives. It could be a carryover from your earlier days, but they have to be exhausted and they have to be thrown out of the system so that they never trouble you again. So it's a process. So our clinging to old habits, past deeds, we need to get over all this. They have to be expelled. And any kind of purification for that matter, whether it is our own purification or whether it is the purification of the elements or the environment or whatever, it has to undergo certain processes. When there is an ore, it has to be crushed into smaller pieces. Okay, otherwise nothing will act on it. So you get the blows, right? And then you are baked. Then you are heated up so that the other elements go. Otherwise, I was reminded when I was reading this prayer of that very characteristic, diagram which we studied in chemistry of electrolysis. There is a cathode and there is an anode. So the cathode is actually the pure metal. So if that, and there is a solution that both are dipped in. So to my mind, it seemed like this solution is all the experiences of the life itself. And the anode is the impure metal, us. Okay. And then there is the cathode, which is actually the negative. It is the negative terminal. And it is a pure metal which is put over there. So one could take that is the portion of the divine, the purest form of the metal, that psychic being. And whatever impurities, when the divine current flows through you, then what happens? All the impurities, the pure metal starts moving ion by ion towards the cathode and starts getting deposited over there. And whatever are the impurities, they settle down as something which we term in science as anode mud. So they just leave you. And it's a process, it's a circuit that is created. And so the psychic being is always there. But we need these life situations for it to awaken. And whatever are the impurities in us, the psychic being is actually attracting us, no? So it will attract only something that is pure and divine to itself. And whatever be the impurities, they will be washed out. So some people, now the passage that I'm going to read is very interesting. Some people, those who are called pessimists, perceive almost exclusively the dark side of everything. The optimists, on the other hand, see only the side of the beauty and harmony. And if it is foolish and ignorant to be an unwitting optimist, is it not making a happy conquest to become a willing optimist? In the eyes of pessimists, whatever one does will always be bad, ignorant, or egoistic. How could one satisfy them? It is an impossible task. So pessimists have very hope for them is very limited or very less. And here the mother is urging us to become optimists. Now here two interesting words, unwitting optimist and willing optimist. And if we look at pessimism, or we have often heard that saying or that adage that with every dark cloud there is a silver lining. Every dark cloud has a silver lining. So the optimist says that, the silver lining. And a willing optimist would say that even if he is not able to see the silver lining, because he has faith. Okay. And the pessimist, what is the pessimist going to say? I tried a lot of ways how a pessimist would put this. So finally, what came out was, with every silver lining, the pessimist would say, with every silver lining, there is a dark cloud of despair. So, but the mother uses the word unwitting optimist. If we can't help it, unwitting optimist would be someone who is an optimist, but from an unenlightened state. And जो हो जाए, जो भी हो जाए, भगवान आप हैं, आप देख लेना, But here something is lacking, no? अच्छा हो भी सकता है, नहीं भी हो सकता है, There is a joke which I read. It is about the height of optimism. Now, there is a man who is standing on the 20th floor of a building, and he trips over and falls. And it's a straight building. And so he's falling. And there is a person who is standing at the 10th floor, large window. His window is open, and he sees this man falling. And this man, the one who is standing on the window, hears this other person who is falling saying, "So far, so good." So I was debating whether it is unwitting optimism or willing optimism. Finally, I came to the conclusion, ये willing optimism ही है शायद, because the person has, there is no chance now, और उसके पास कुछ है नहीं करने के लिए, जो best है वही वो कर रहा है. So looking at the words unwitting and willing gives us a clue what the mother wants us to be. She is urging us to become willing optimists. And willing optimism is a voluntary optimism which requires you can say luminous trust in the divine grace. And in spite of the outer circumstances being dim or dark, one is able to see the hand of the divine or the divine grace acting behind that also. And it does not mean that you give up and let the divine do everything. It means that yes, the divine has given you this vision to see the divine grace, feel its tangibility, and that urges you to act. And that does not allow you to give up on the action. You still have to act, and therein you act with more courage, more perseverance, and more receptivity. That is the willing optimism that the mother is urging us to do. Antonio Gramsci, an Italian philosopher and a critic, was the most vocal critic of Mussolini. He was put in prison in 1926, and he stayed in the prison till his last, and 1937 he left his body. He wrote a line which has become very, you can say, very powerful. He said, "I am a pessimist because of intelligence, and I am an optimist because of will." So Antonio Gramsci's pessimism of the intellect and optimism of the will also stems from the very fact, and he lived his life like that, with courage, tenacity, persistence, acceptance, all will come. And this is the willing optimism. When we are willing optimists, we really try to find and we really try to perceive the situation as it is. And in spite of the situation being as it is, we are able to discern and perceive that there can be worst in the best possible, in the most possible best, and there could be best hiding in the most possible or seemingly worst, you know. So the things, the situations which we think are very rosy and very, you can say, very helpful for us, and they give us all sorts of comforts and all, well, there might be a catch in that. They may take you away from the path that you are seeking. And whereas the seemingly worst kind of situations may, there is some, you can say, the light is shining behind those, because after overcoming these difficult situations, after overcoming this, we identify more and more with what is divine within us. Those are the situations that will bring that out. So, what are the winning situations then? Are the difficult situations the winners, or the so-called comfortable life? It depends on how you perceive them. It's not that one should not have a comfortable life. One can have a comfortable life, but one enjoys those comforts also, knowing that if those comforts are taken away, then there is, and if difficult situations also come, one is equally prepared to face them. That is the, you can say, the state of equanimity then. And then comforts, whether you are in comfort or in difficulty, don't even matter to you. You get the strength to overcome the difficulties, and when you have got good situations, you enjoy those also. What a balance. So as here now, the mother is saying, so what to do? Now confusion, you know. Willing optimist banna hai, situations buri ho gayi hain. So what to do? And there is only one recourse, she said. There is only one way out. To unite as perfectly as possible with the highest and purest light that one can conceive. To identify one's consciousness as completely as possible with the absolute consciousness. To strive to receive all inspirations from that consciousness alone, so as to foster as best one can its manifestation upon earth, and trusting in its power to regard all events with serenity. So the only way out is to connect with the highest level of consciousness. Now it does not mean that we have to really reach to that really high, you know, uske alawa koi chance nahi hai hamara. If we are not in that very high, you know, supreme level of consciousness, is there no hope for us? There is a lot of hope for us. And this is what the mother is bringing out. Act from a consciousness which you perceive is the highest in you at that time. It could be in the form of non-haste. It may say, okay, don't worry, be happy, or do not take the decision in a hurry. That is your highest state. Or it may be, you can say, non-injury to others. That is the highest state acting in you at that time. Or spirit of sacrifice. You know, we have often seen our parents do it, and as parents, we also do it very willingly, you know. So at that state, we have to identify what is the highest state in us which is acting at that point of time. And if we meet with failure in spite of that, and if the difficulties still persist, anyway they will tell us that our link, we were not looking rightfully at the highest within us. There is something higher in us still, okay? And another thing is that in spite of our best efforts of connecting with the highest consciousness within us acting at that time, in spite of the failures, if we just have that kind of a faith, if we look to the mother or the divine or whatever is the divine for you, you make your best choice. You make your bestest of actions, and then you offer it to the divine. When you offer it to the divine, even the slightest bit of opening is actually going to loosen the consciousness to such an extent that you will be able to perceive what is lacking within you yourself. So that is actually the key. When we tell the mother, and one of the very first prayers of the mother, she has written that she has written about details, consecration in details. Consecration in theory and principle we know. This is the path, sach bolna chahiye, ye karna chahiye, wo karna chahiye. But what is consecration in detail? Consecration in detail means putting everything, telling her everything, telling the divine everything. I'm going to do this. I do not know whether this action of mine is right or wrong, but I am remembering you, I am offering it to you, and I think this is the best that I can do. And let the best happen. You offer it at her divine feet, and you see what happens. Even if the action is not best for you at that time, it is her working now. She will draw out the best from the worst for you. And that is, she's doing it perpetually. She's doing it constantly. And with that faith, whatever is worst in us can be turned into the best only by the divine grace. So utter faith in the divine grace and unshaking faith in the divine grace is what is going to see us through every kind of situation. Not only overcome the situations for the time being, it has got a far-reaching effect. It is, you get into a continuum, you get into a link, and that is a non-ending link that is created for you. And then the path will become easy. Whatever needs to come to you will come to you. And yet, what the mother is saying, yes, personal effort is necessary. Personal effort in reaching to that highest consciousness within you. Personal effort in looking what is it in you that is preventing you from taking the right action. So, 2-3 days ago, I was worried about something, and my daughter was sitting right next to me, and she's in class. She's just crossed class 12, ready to go into college, and she tells me something very profound, and I felt that it matches. I must share while we are talking about this prayer. She says, "Why are you so worried? You are looking. जिस तरह से आप देख रहे हो वो गलत है शायद. Life is," she says, "life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of your own reactions to it." So that was an eye-opener for me, and instantly, yeah. So life is 10% of what happens to us and 90% of how we react to it. And she, in her tender years, she's telling me, this feeling and this quotation and this adage has changed my life. So I was very motivated. And so the worst in the seemingly best and the best in the seemingly worst, we get that perception when we put every choice we are making, and based on the choice, our acts to the divine mother. And then mother, as usual, she is giving us one of her Maha Mantras, the last line of the prayer. And yet, how ardently must we always aspire for that inaccessible perfection. So, we have to go on aspiring. For the time being, we have to understand that all our so-called good acts or the best acts will bring only partial results and will give us fragmented success. But nevertheless, we must go on aspiring intensely. This is what she's telling us again and again, with complete faith. And these are her words, and she has given these words to us in the form of prayers and meditations. What more do we need? And as Oishani, she brought out so beautifully in that, she sang so beautifully in that song. What was that? Maa ke dware. And then in the prayer, the song she was singing, it's also that sab kuch hai wahan pe. Maa ke paas sab kuch hai. She'll give you everything that you need. Need for your progress. Need for your growing higher. and ultimately reaching that level of consciousness which she wants you to reach. So do your best and then maybe say, जाके रखो साइयां मार सके ना कोई.